What about the Calgary Flames? Let's talk about them. Jonathan Huberdeau, that's been the big story the last couple of days. Just not off to an ideal start, to put it lightly. But the big story, obviously, he gets benched in the third period against the Nashville Predators. The Flames were down entering that third period. He sits, and they come back and they win. He speaks to the media the day after, trying to take some accountability for his play, and just, he's obviously not happy about being benched. I mean, I have my thoughts on it, but from your bird's eye view, what did you think of the benching?
Yeah, we should spend more time on your thoughts because you're around a lot more. I think, it's an embarrassed player. I mean, as much as we can all be like, yeah, he's making X amount of money, and no player wants to be in that situation.
No.
I mean, that's part of the reason it happens, right? The coach is trying to elicit a response, maybe from the other players around him that night, maybe from that player himself over time. I mean, the one thing a coach can do is give or take away ice time. That's really, I mean, I get that they can yell and scream and do a bunch of other things, but there's very few things that are more effective in terms of the coaching tools than the ice time thing. So, for Huberdeau, it's not gone well. I don't get the sense, we should be clear in case I don't know what's out there, because there's a lot of crazy stuff on the internet these days.
There's a lot of crazy stuff.
I don't think he has an issue with Ryan Huska or anything like that. I don't think this is a personal situation. I really do think it's, the coach made a decision based on the way the player is underperforming in his eyes and is trying to send a message. And I think the player feels crappy about that. And that's where we're at. I don't see it as any bigger than that. Now, it could get bigger than that. We'll see how it goes.
But he did acknowledge that, he did talk to Ryan about that. And,
right.
I'm sure it went as well as it could have. But, yeah, could you imagine being in a situation like his where, I don't want to go all the way back to the beginning from the trade and all that, but we all know that was an issue in itself. But then you clearly don't get along with the last coach. And then you get a new guy in, and it still doesn't work. Like that. I don't know. I think if you're Jonathan Hubert, I feel bad for him. I heard on Quebec radio yesterday, he got called a fat cat by one of the radio hosts at BPM Spa. I don't know, man. I don't get the sense that he's that type of player who just gets his money and he's just content with just living his life making $10.5 million every year. That being said, he does have to do things in his game to get himself back to that level that he knows he can play at. It's just, I don't think he's this lazy bum who just...
No way.
No, absolutely not. But it is a very unfortunate situation for him where he thought he was going to be in the situation where he can get his confidence and swagger back, and it has not happened. And just on the ice, he's a shell of himself. Literally, the puck is on his stick and offense dies. You pin him on the wall and nothing happens. I'm speaking facts here. I'm not trying to dump on the player. That's literally what's happening with him right now. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's not ideal for him.
I bet he'd give back a portion of that money to get some of his ability back or his confidence back, whatever it is.
He might actually, yeah, seriously. That's what's tough too.
I don't see this. I'm with you. I don't think he's just checked out. I don't think he just all of a sudden doesn't give a shit. But it hasn't worked. It hasn't been an ideal move for him. And where the places you go next, if this doesn't turn around, are not places you want to be. Because I don't know. Let's face it. You're not trading that contract at this point.
You're not buying it out.
It's just everybody involved can't let their minds go there. I think that they have to be okay, how do we get the most out of Huberdeau? And I would expect they're going to continue trying to do that. I mean,
I would expect a trade. I think if I'm
trade him.
No, not trade him. I would expect some kind of move where you get a player who can play with him. That's how you have to make this work. You ultimately have to continue, doing what you can with him in the lineup, but you have to look at his years in Florida and see how it worked with the players that he got to play with. And you think, okay, who can we put in those spots? Who can we go out and seek through a trade and plug into our lineup who can help get him going? That's what I think you ultimately have to do here, because I don't think you're moving him.
Well, he's got to look at himself too. And I'm not saying
absolutely he does.
But at some point he can't worry about who he's playing with or who's standing behind the bench or who's watching up in the press box saying this or that.
Yeah, and the fact you have to do all these things to make a $10.5 million player work, that's...
Well...
I don't know.
There's a reason he got that contract.
There is a reason why he got that contract.
And you'd like to believe it's still in there. Because, I'm not aware of any sort of significant change to his health or a big injury. Sometimes, unfortunately, that's what happens to players. This seems like a combination of how he's used, how much he played last year, especially didn't get a lot of minutes for someone of his stature. Who he's played, like there's a lot of stuff going on there, and not a lot of time to figure it out.
Yeah,
the best news is, I should say too, though, they won the game they benched him in. That's the best case scenario when you bench a star player.
If they lost that game, I don't know, would that have really been that much different?
It feels worse.
It feels worse for everybody else.
Because here's the thing, he's still a good enough player. He could, on his own, make an amazing offensive play. So if you lose the game and you intentionally taken him out of your arsenal, like it's just like,
that's fair.
I think it's a little eeasier to digest when you've won and you're like, okay, now we go back. Everything worked that night. And
I'll tell you what, though, I liked how, to your point, with the way that game went for them, it also makes it easier for the players to respond the way that they did. Like I personally, I think the way the players responded after, with one quote in particular from Dylan Dubé, I'll read a bit of it here. Hubie is the man. He's good. The most positive guy I've been around. He's a hell of a player. He's a hell of a person. It's fine. It's one period of his life, of his career. It's not a big deal. Him, Noah Hannafin as well. Like, and Mackenzie Weegar spoke yesterday too. I thought the way the Flames kind of stood up for him and just said essentially that they have his back. I mean, I'm sure maybe in other markets it's happened like that too, but that just kind of stood out to me, just because I don't get the sense that Huberdeau in that locker room is like a pariah or like maligned or anything like that. I feel like those guys generally like him.
Sure, and it's a sign they like each other in general. Like that's what you want. That's the response you want from a team to something that's not great. Did you see who else was benched this week?
Well, a couple of days ago, I know Johnny Gaudreau was benched.
Yes.
And that's what I was alluding to with the crazy stuff, because there are people in Calgary right now who are like, oh, hey, maybe we should trade Gaudreau and for Huberdeau. I don't know if you saw too. I don't know if this is true or not. I never got to know his family like that, but like people were saying that like Gaudreau's uncle was like in someone's mentions and discussing the idea of trading for Johnny Gaudreau. Like it's crazy. That's what I mean by there's crazy stuff out there.
Even if that's true, and I say this with respect, I've got some uncles, like they're not privy to knowing everything going on with me.
They have no influence on my job, future, and security. Like they could say they want me to work for some outlet. I don't know.
And at the risk of being totally wrong, and maybe Johnny's best friends with his uncle, he's probably not sharing all of everything in his mind. Anyway, let's put crazy back in the drawer here.
All that to say, like people in this market, I mean, every market, it's like that. They just get crazy. And I think it's not going to stop until Huberdeau ultimately plays better, or the team plays as a whole better. They're on a 2-game winning streak. That's
what happens if they start pulling it apart and trading other guys, though? Anyway,
well,
let's save some content for later.
Let's save some content.